What's up? This is Megan from the Overcoming Food Addictions team, and I am back today to talk to you about the top 3 things that conquering our disordered eating behaviors requires from us that might actually surprise you. And 2 of them have nothing to do with food. Imagine that. What I do want to do and what I will be doing in these videos is talking to you about how through my own personal journey, I'm able to relate to the topics that I discuss, and I'm really truly able to understand them. So the way we're taught to go about health is pretty basic. 2 very simple concepts: eat well and exercise. But for some reason, it seems to have become very complicated to us as a society. Not only do I know this from my own personal experience and the experiences of the women I help in my coaching practice, I know this because there's actually a ridiculous amount of evidence to prove it. We've been taught that health and controlling our weight is as simple as eat well and exercise. And for the majority of us, when we hear eat well, we automatically think diet, right? So suddenly our efforts to eat well and exercise turn into go on a diet and exercise. And though they might sound similar, they're very, very, very different. So here's some proof. Recent statistics show that 45 million people in our country go on diets yearly. We invest $33 billion into diet companies each year, and yet 2/3 of our country is overweight or obese. So clearly, dieting and exercise are not cutting it. In fact, it sounds like the combination of these 2 things alone, just alone, might actually be making us sicker and more overweight in the space that we're holding them right now. So if you look again at the statistics, our increase in our struggle with weight and overall health continues to almost parallel the increase in profits for the diet and weight loss industries. And I could go on and on about this, of course, but for the sake of sticking to the topic at hand, I'm gonna move on. So I remember when I joined the health and fitness MLM company I started coaching with back in 2016, and I had completely convinced myself that because I was surrounded by a community of other women preaching body love, and this isn't a diet, it's a lifestyle mantra we hear so often lately, I was finally on the right track to food freedom and loving my body. After 2 years of continuing to practice and preach counting calories, portion control, meal plans, hard workouts, and overall body shifting and weight loss as a goal, I finally realized that although I had grown as a person and I had developed a great community around me, I was still just as caught up in dieting as I had always been, and my issues with food in my body hadn't gotten any better. I just believed they had because everyone around me was telling me so, even though they were supportive and lovely. And this is very much a testament to the fact that we place more value on the opinions of those around us than we do our own. So this brings me to the first thing we absolutely need to do in order to conquer our challenges with food. So the first thing that has absolutely nothing to do with food is living authentically and learning to listen to our internal compass. As I just mentioned, we spend a lot of time valuing the opinions and belief systems of society and the people we surround ourselves with over our own, right? So it's our natural instinct to want to feel loved and accepted. So when someone or something tells us how they believe we should do that, we tend to believe them no matter how much it goes against our own intuition. I mean, what the heck do we know anyway, right? There's a lot of education and resources out there that tell us how we should be living, how we should be behaving, what rules we need to follow, how we should be spending our money, how much we should weigh, etc. But strangely, there isn't a lot of education on how to be who we actually are, despite what everyone else thinks. So we live day in and day out ignoring our internal cues, biological, physiological, and spiritual. And this is why we suffer. This is why so many of our behaviors become disordered. We're frustrated with food because instead of listening to our bodies when they tell us what, when, and how much we should be eating, we follow some generic meal plan or some new fad diet that worked for, Sally, what's her name? And then we hate our bodies because we don't even recognize them as our own. We see them as a measure of how we compare to everyone around us. We hate exercise because we're taught the more it hurts, the better. And for those of us that really just want to maintain a healthy, balanced lifestyle, the idea that we need to perform the same way as an athlete does is ridiculous. And the biggest issue is that we have a completely skewed view of health because our culture has nearly demonized the idea of emotion and spirituality two aspects of our being that are very much a fact, and when ignored in the area of self-care, will cause us much suffering. We're taught that health is all about strength and numbers and physical, blah, blah, blah. We aren't supposed to feel our feelings. We have to be strong. Soft is weak, and anything spiritual is outdated and woo-woo. You know why they do this? So think back on the statistics I mentioned earlier. How much money do you think the diet and weight loss industry would lose if we finally discovered that we don't need anything to be truly healthy other than ourselves? That we aren't broken and we don't need to constantly be fixed. You are not broken, but the reason you feel like you are is because you're missing half of the puzzle in your journey towards health, and our culture is making sure of it. So again, the very first thing you need to do in order to conquer your disordered eating patterns is to learn how to connect back to your internal compass. Listen to what your body is telling you and understand that there is always a higher power working in your favor. The second thing I want to mention that also has nothing to do with food is the idea of abundance. We as a collective are taught to live in a lack mindset. We're made to feel guilty for receiving, yet we're surrounded by messages that suggest we don't have enough and we should want more. We can't be happy unless we're living like a celebrity. We have to constantly be sacrificing in order to get what we want. We should always be working to change the way we look. And of course, in order to be considered a healthy eater and at a healthy weight, we need to restrict food. All things that keep us in constant efforts to achieve a happier future, but with no room for fulfillment in the present. So one of the very first things I like to do with my clients is teach them the importance of shifting this mindset. We're so caught up in this lie that the more we do, the more pain and suffering we inflict on ourselves, the more we will receive. But this is not how the balance of give and receive works. The way we're taught to give is to create rules and expend more energy than we have. This is what creates lack in our lives. Think of it in terms of filling your cup. If you haven't heard this one before, it works like this. We can't pour from an empty cup. We need to be filling our own cups daily, and really, it should be overflowing. So we always have a full cup and we can give from the overspill. Just like when we fly, we're asked to put on our own masks in an emergency before helping the person next to us, right? We cannot give if we have nothing to give. And yet this seems to be the way our society is pushing us to think. And this often leaves us mentally and emotionally starved. Now, this works similarly when it comes to the way we eat. One thing worth noting is that all of our behaviors tend to pour over into every aspect of our lives. So the way we live our lives is always a good indication of the way we behave around food. Since we're taught that working hard for the future with little to no fulfillment in the now is the norm, this spills over into our behaviors around eating and our bodies. We believe that the harder we work at restricting food, having a perfect diet, and beating ourselves up with exercise, the greater our results will be in the future. But here's the catch. This idea does not actually support the way our bodies and our minds are programmed to function. All of this hard work is actually working against our bodies, causing stress, and therefore isn't maintainable. For example, we are biologically programmed to function when it comes to food by feast or famine. When our brain senses a lack of nutrients, it'll go into famine mode, causing our body to store fat. Then when our brain senses food is available, it will signal us to eat enough to store up for the next famine. This worked in our favor back when feast and famine was actually a thing, but now that we're choosing the famine and actually have food available to us like all the time, we are literally causing our own disordered eating patterns in this space. So to get to the point, the more we restrict and live in a lack mentality with no allowance of abundance, the more we suffer and the more we feed into our disordered eating patterns. Allow yourself the space for receiving, and when it comes to food, try and start moving away from that diet restriction mentality. In practicing these things, you will be working with your body and mind instead of against it. So the last thing I want to mention that conquering our disordered eating patterns will require of us actually does have to do with the food. And it's paying attention to the quality of the things that we put into our bodies. This is another thing I have so much to say about. I have so much to talk about, and you will hear so much more from me and the others on this channel about it in the future. But to sum it up, 80% of the food we have available to us is not even real food at all. It's food-like products, processed and full of chemicals. This stuff is literally created to cut costs of production and make us addicted. Consuming high amounts of these food-like products will create in the body the illusion that we are receiving nutrients because we feel full after eating it. But in reality, because we are filling ourselves up with chemicals, we're nutritionally starved, since we need a certain amount of nutrients in our diets to function properly. If the brain does not sense them in the body, it will signal us to keep eating until we meet the requirements. Again, leading to patterns of disordered eating. So if you feel like you're having trouble with overeating or binge eating and you're aware that your diet consists of a lot of processed foods, you're probably nutrient deficient. And you would fare well to start incorporating more high quality foods into your diet. This is something that can be done gradually that will have a noticeable impact almost right away. Also, if you're unsure as to if you're struggling with disordered eating, or you know you are but you don't know where to start on your path to healing, please download my free Jumpstart to Food Freedom guide by clicking the link below. And you can also learn how to work with me as your coach by checking out my website. The link for this will also be below. If you found this video helpful, please like and share, and of course subscribe to our channel to keep up on all of the information we have coming your way. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!